Hi, today I'll be covering SAT Practice Test 1 Writing and Language questions 1 through 11. So, to start with the passage in writing and language, you generally don't actually need to read the entire passage for most of the questions. You can usually just look at context and look at the grammar, and that way you can focus your time more specifically on the questions rather than just trying to understand a passage, where oftentimes you won't have a question until down here. However, if you do have the time, it's generally a good idea to read the passage. It can provide a lot of extra background information that can help you answer content based questions and get a deeper understanding of the actual vocabulary and information that you might need to answer the questions as perfectly as possible. So, because we have some time today, let's go through and actually read the passage. So, to start, right, this passage is called Way to Go, and it's about Greek yogurt. It says Greek yogurt, a strange form of cultured yogurt, has grown enormously in popularity in the United States since it was first introduced to the country in the late 1980s. And just for context, I'm not going to read the entire passage and then we're going to answer the questions. We'll answer them as we go. Generally, this is another good strategy. It depends really on how fast you can read and how fast you can get through the questions. So, continuing, from 2011 to 2012 alone, sales of Greek yogurt in the US increased by 50%. This resulting increase in Greek yogurt production has forced those involved in the business to address the detrimental effects that the yogurt making process may be having on the environment. Fortunately, farmers and others in the Greek yogurt business have found many methods of controlling and eliminating most environmental threats. Given these solutions, as well as the many health benefits of the food, the advantages of Greek yogurt outdo the potential drawbacks of its production. So here it's asking about the word outdo here in question 1. And it's saying, should we replace it with another word or stick to the word outdo? So let's look at the context. Given these solutions, as well as the many health benefits of the food, the advantages of Greek yogurt outdo the potential drawbacks of its production. So here we're looking at two specific options and we're trying to decide which is the better one. Outdo tends to have a more competition aspect, right? Like two teams outdo each other. Right, two teams don't necessarily have a reasonable debate and decide who's better, right? They compete. So let's see if there's an option that more directly connects to this idea of having two different sides and considering both options. So no change may not be our best option. Defeat and outperform both have that kind of competitive aspect. And again, this is like an argument with both sides have value. And we're trying to decide which is best, right? We have the advantages of Greek yogurt and the drawbacks of its production. Outweigh is perfect, right? Yeah, you're weighing both of your options. You've got one scale here and one scale there, and you're trying to decide which is best. Let's go with D, outweigh. Question 2 asks, which choice provides the most relevant detail? So let's continue to read the passage. The main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt is the creation of acid whey as a byproduct. Because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces large amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. To address the problem of disposal, farmers have found a number of uses for it. They can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement, and people can make their own Greek-style yogurt at home by straining regular yogurt. And it's asking which provides the most relevant detail. So the current one we have is that an alternative use for acid whey, so remember we're looking for a number of uses for acid whey, is adding it to livestock for a protein supplement and making it at home. So making it at home isn't actually addressing the whole acid whey problem, right? You're just making it at home. So let's look at our other options. B says supplement and convert it into gas to use as fuel in electricity production. That one's legitimate, right? You can use it as a supplement and convert it into gas. That's good. And another thing to add is that it removes this comma here. And because we only have 2 options and neither half of the sentence could really be, or the second half at least, could not be a sentence on its own, we actually don't want a comma before the end. We want to weigh these as 2 options. So B looks pretty good. Let's just double check the other 2. Right, supplement, while sweet whey is more desirable as a food additive for humans, that's again not relevant to a number of uses for acid whey. The last one says which provides an important element of their diet. Again, we're looking for another use for acid whey, and both of these also have that comma, which we don't want. Question 3 asks about the next sentence, which says, if it is improperly introduced to the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. And we're looking at this can pollute waterways statement. So can pollute waterways here actually looks good, right? If it's improperly introduced to the environment, it can produce waterways, comma, depleting the oxygen content. This depleting the oxygen content section becomes what's like in a positive phrase, right? It's a set of nouns and adjectives that are describing one word here, the pollution of the waterways. So that looks pretty good, but let's look at the rest of our options. Can pollute waterways, comma, and here we have an apostrophe here. So we don't want an apostrophe here because it's plural, meaning like there are more than one waterways, but it's not possessive. And an apostrophe means generally that it's possessive, that the waterways are owning something, which they're not here. So we don't want B. C says could have polluted waterways. Once again, we're saying if it is improperly introduced, it can produce waterways. So we're not saying that it may have happened in the past. We're not sure. We're saying it can happen. And has polluted waterways also has that apostrophe, which we don't want. So let's go with A. Question 4 asks about the sentence, yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, and government officials are also working together to develop additional solutions for reusing whey. So here we have a list, right? We have yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, and government officials. And it's asking about how we should punctuate this list. When you have a list of items like that, you generally want to separate them with commas and then have the word and then have your final option there. So we don't necessarily want a comma after the and we also want a comma before the and. So let's look at our options. So A, no change, that has a semicolon. Semicolons are used to separate two clauses that could be sentences on their own. And here we have a list of nouns. So this one's not relevant. Scientists with the colon suggests that we're going to describe the scientists, which we're not. We're including them in a list. So we don't want the colon, comma, and that looks perfect, right? They're part of a list. And the last one has an and, comma. So we don't want a comma after the word and. So let's go with C. Question 5 says, to make the paragraph most logical, sentence 5 should be placed. So let's look at sentence 5. Right, sentence 5 says, if it is improperly introduced to the environment, acid wave runoff can pollute waterways, etc. And we probably want to put the sentence somewhere where it's describing what acid wave runoff can do. So maybe after we describe what it is and how it exists and how it's hard to get rid of it, and then we can talk about different ways that we're trying to work with the product and the waste. So if you look at the sentence, right, sentence 1 says the main environmental problem is the acid wave. Cool. Sentence 2 is saying because it takes 4 times as much milk to make, it produces a large amount of it and it's difficult to dispose of. And question 3 is saying to address the problem of disposal. So we probably want it in between 2 and 3, right? It's hard to dispose of. If it's improperly added, then it causes all these problems, and that's why we need to address the problem. So it produces a nice logical flow. So the location that is after sentence 2, which is option C. Question 6 asks, the writer is considering deleting the underlying sentence. Should they do this? So though these conservation methods can be costly and time-consuming, they are well worth the effort. Nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food, etc. So this is providing some sort of transitional work. So we probably do want this sentence to be there, right? Because we're initially talking about the environmental detriments, and now we're talking about how it's good for you. So let's go and look at these no options, right? No, we should not delete it. It's important to check. Sometimes they'll try and trick you with that. So no, because it continues the explanation of how acid wave can be disposed of safely. So it doesn't. It transitions to a new topic. And question D says, no, because it sets up the argument in the paragraph for the benefits of Greek yogurt. And this one is correct, right? So we're moving on to a different section, right? Because we're weighing the two options as mentioned in the first sentence. Question 7 is saying, it is an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves to be a digestive aid, and it contains few calories in its unsweetened, low and non-fat forms. And it's asking about this verb to be. So here we actually want a preposition, right? It serves blank a digestive aid. So we want like a nice one-word preposition. So as would work, right? It serves as a digestive aid. Like introduces a degree of skepticism, which we don't necessarily want, right? It is a digestive aid. For a digestive aid doesn't quite make sense, right? Something is a digestive aid. So let's go with B. Question 8 says, and it contains few calories in its low and non-fat forms. In general, when you have a list of different attributes like this, you want to try and match the sentence structure and the internal structure of the different verbs. So it is an excellent source and it serves, right, but there's no actual noun here. So it just serves to be a digestive acid. So we want another present tense verb with no subject. So here, what we'd want to use is the one that is contains, because it has no subject and it's a present tense verb. Question 9 asks about the word also in the sentence. Also, because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving. Because it's about the word also, which is the transition at the beginning of the sentence, let's look at the sentence before it. And that says, Greek yogurt is slightly lower in sugar and carbohydrates, than conventional yogurt is. So also here actually makes a lot of sense, right? So we're saying it's lower in sugar and carbs and it has more protein. So let's look at the other options just in case. So option B is saying in other words because it is more concentrated. So that one doesn't quite make sense because it's suggesting that the second sentence, right, the protein sentence, is an explanation of the sentence prior to it, right? It's just describing it in another way. And that isn't correct, right? They're two separate sentences, two separate concepts. So let's not do that one. Therefore is similar, right? It's suggesting cause and effect. It's lower in sugar, therefore it's higher in protein. And unfortunately, that's not quite how it works. So let's not go with that one as well. For the last one, for instance, because it is more concentrated. Greek yogurt contains more protein per serving. And that one also doesn't make sense, right? It's suggesting that it's an instance of having low sugar. It has more protein. So let's go with option A. Also, in addition, it has more protein. Question 10 is asking about the word satiated. So if you look up, the sentence says, thereby helping people stay satiated for longer periods of time. The word satiated as a vocabulary word has a lot of connotations with having to do with being full, right? You're satiated when you eat enough food. It's a very food-related word. So that one actually sounds great, right? If you eat more protein, you stay fuller for a longer period of time, you stay satiated. But let's look at the other options as usual. Right, question option B says fulfilled. Fulfilled tends to be more about like a mental emotional state, right? You're fulfilled emotionally, not really fulfilled like in terms of eating. So that one isn't really making as much sense as satiated would. Complacent suggests that you're just like okay with it and that it's, once again, more emotional than it is food-based. And the last one is sufficient, and you don't stay sufficient for a long period of time. You might say sufficiently satiated if you've eaten enough. So let's go with option A. Lastly, question 11 says, is about the last sentence. Let's read the rest of the paragraph. These health benefits have prompted Greek yogurt's recent surge in popularity. In fact, Greek yogurt can be found in an increasing number of products, such as snack food and frozen desserts. Because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, therefore farmers and businesses should continue finding safe and effective methods of producing the food. And it's asking you about this transition right here. Because consumers reap the nutritional benefits, farmers and businesses should consider finding more effective methods. So if we look at it right here, it's saying those who make it, therefore farmers and businesses should. So it's a little redundant because we have the word therefore and this because clause. And this because clause is a lot more strong anyway, so we might want to consider getting rid of the therefore because it's copying what we've already suggested before of that cause and effect. So let's look at one that doesn't have it. So not no change. And we also don't want so because that's, again, redundant. So the one with the comma actually makes a lot of sense because farmers and businesses should continue. So that one is grammatically correct because we have an independent clause and a dependent clause. And it makes sense in the context of the sentence. Option D says farmers and businesses should consider finding an effective method. Usually when you use a colon, it's to either describe or provide an instance of a particular noun, right? So they sell it, colon, and then more description. But this isn't description. This is suggesting that someone else should take action because of something else. So we don't want to include a colon here because it's confusing. Let's go with option B. In general, to summarize kind of the main points, the main questions asked by this passage, it's really important to consider context when you're doing writing and language. It's tempting and oftentimes it's more efficient even, and sometimes if your reading speed is something that's slowing you down in terms of your SAT passage completion, to quickly zip through the passage and not read any of the sentences, especially if they're nice and spread out like this, and just answer the questions based on grammar. But a lot of these, you needed that actual context from the story itself. So sometimes, whether that be by scanning it quickly or summarizing each sentence really fast, it's worth going through the passage if you have the time. In general, though, SAT does not actually penalize wrong answers, so it's also important to get an answer on that page. Thank you.